The massive silver ship broke through the clouds on a Tuesday morning in the year 2147. It moved slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the universe. The people of Earth had been waiting for this moment for generations. They had looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. Now they had their answer. The ship landed in the Nevada desert, its enormous frame casting a shadow that stretched for miles. Within hours, military vehicles surrounded the landing site. News helicopters circled overhead like curious birds. The whole world watched their screens, holding their breath. Captain stood at the front of the welcoming party. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm gray eyes. He had served in 3 different conflicts across the solar system and had seen things that would break most people, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He kept his face neutral, but his heart pounded in his chest. Beside him stood Dr. Lisa Monroe, the head of Earth's program. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her recording device. She had spent her entire career preparing to talk to beings from another world. Now that the moment had arrived, she felt like a student on her first day of school. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. A ramp extended down to the desert sand. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared in the doorway. Ambassador was unlike anything humans had imagined. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with a body that resembled a giant insect. His skin was a deep purple color, and great iridescent wings folded against his back. His eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the desert sun in 1,000 tiny rainbows. When he walked, his movements were precise and mechanical, as if every step had been calculated in advance. Behind him came 2 other aliens, smaller and stockier, with gray skin and no visible eyes. They carried devices that hummed with strange energy, assumed they were guards or assistants of some kind. Stopped a few feet from the human delegation. He looked at them for a long moment, his compound eyes unreadable. Then he spoke, and his voice was surprisingly smooth, translated by a device around his neck. "I am ambassador of the Galactic Council. We have observed your species for many of your centuries. We have decided it is time to make formal contact." Stepped forward. "I am Captain, representing the United Nations of Earth. We welcome you to our planet." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your welcome is noted but unnecessary. We do not require your permission to be here. The Galactic Council governs all space-faring civilizations. You are now within our jurisdiction." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. This was not the friendly first contact scenario she had hoped for. The alien continued speaking, laying out the terms of humanity's introduction to the galactic community. The Galactic Council had existed for over 100,000 years. It was made up of 12 elder species who had achieved interstellar travel long before Earth's sun had formed. They maintained order and peace across millions of star systems. Humanity, according to their records, was a Class 7 species. This meant they were considered primitive, aggressive, and unstable. Their history of warfare and environmental destruction had been carefully documented. The Council had debated for decades whether to make contact at all. Some had argued that humans should be left alone until they destroyed themselves, as so many young species did. But humanity had surprised them. They had not destroyed themselves. They had spread to their moon and to Mars. They had begun to reach for the outer planets. This forced the Council's hand. A species could not be allowed to expand into the galaxy without proper oversight. The terms offered were simple. Humanity would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Union as a client species. They would provide labor for mining operations and raw materials from their resource-rich planet. In exchange, they would receive protection from the many dangers of the universe they were not yet equipped to face. Listened to all of this without interrupting. His expression never changed. When finished, a heavy silence fell over the desert. "You want us to be your workers," said finally, "your servants." We prefer the term client species, replied. It is a great honor. Many civilizations wait thousands of years for such an opportunity. Looked at Lisa. She gave him a small nod. They had prepared for many scenarios, including this one. Ambassador, said, we appreciate you coming all this way to deliver this offer, but I think there may be some things about humanity that your observations missed. Wings twitched. We have watched your species for over 500 years. Our records are comprehensive. Records can miss things, said. Numbers and data can only tell you so much. They can show you what we've done, but not what we're capable of doing. He gestured to the military vehicles around them, to the helicopters in the sky, to the satellites that he knew were watching from orbit. 200 years ago, we were still burning coal for energy. 100 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. 50 years ago, we landed our first permanent colony on Mars. Do you see the pattern? Said nothing. We grow fast, continued. Faster than you expected, faster than your models predicted, and we don't stop. Every time we face a challenge, we overcome it. Every time someone tells us something is impossible, we find a way. He smiled, and there was something in that smile that made wings fold against his back. So here is our counteroffer. Give us 10 of your years. Send your observers, your scientists, whoever you want. Let them see what we're really capable of, and then we can talk about our place in your union. The alien stared at him for a long moment. This is most irregular. Client species do not negotiate terms. We're not a client species yet, replied. And maybe we never will be. That's what you're going to find out. Turned to consult with his companions. They communicated in clicks and whistles that the translation device did not render. Finally, he turned back to the humans. The Council will consider your proposal, but I warn you, Captain, the galaxy is not kind to those who overestimate their own importance. Many species have thought themselves special. Most of them no longer exist. Nodded. We understand the risks, but underestimating humans has always been a mistake. I'd hate for the Galactic Council to make that mistake too. The aliens returned to their ship without another word. As the silver vessel rose back into the sky, Lisa turned to with wide eyes. Do you think they'll accept? Watch the ship disappear into the clouds. They'll accept. They're curious now, and curiosity is something we can work with. He turned and walked back toward the waiting vehicles. The whole world was watching, waiting to hear what had happened, knew that nothing would ever be the same. Humanity's greatest test was about to begin, and he intended to make sure they passed it. The Galactic Council accepted humanity's proposal, though not without considerable debate. Within 3 months, an assessment team arrived on Earth to begin their evaluation. They came aboard a ship much smaller than this vessel, designed for scientific observation rather than diplomatic ceremony. Senior Assessor L led the team. She was unlike any alien humanity had yet encountered. Her body was made of pure energy, contained within a shell of living crystal that shifted colors as she moved. She had existed for over 12,000 years and had evaluated more than 200 species for council membership. In all that time, she had never found one that truly surprised her. That was about to change. Lieutenant Commander Amy Vance was assigned as Elle's official escort. Amy was 35 years old, with short red hair and a no-nonsense attitude that had earned her respect throughout the United Nations Space Command. She had volunteered for the assignment because she believed humanity needed to put its best foot forward. What she did not expect was to become genuinely invested in proving the alien wrong. The tour began at the Geneva Fusion Complex, the largest power generation facility on Earth. Elle moved through the corridors slowly, her crystal form pulsing with soft light as she scanned everything around her. Your records indicate that humans achieved controlled fusion only 47 years ago, she said, her voice emerging from the crystal like music played through water. That's correct, Amy replied. And yet this facility powers nearly a third of your planet's energy needs. The efficiency ratings are remarkable for such a young technology. Amy smiled. We had a lot of motivation. Climate change was killing us. We needed clean energy or we were going to lose everything. Amazing what humans can do when our backs are against the wall. Elle made a note in her records but said nothing more. From Geneva, they traveled to the vertical farms of Singapore, massive towers that grew enough food to feed hundreds of millions. They visited the medical research centers in Tokyo, where human scientists were making progress on diseases that had plagued the species for. They toured the manufacturing plants in Germany, where robots and humans worked side by side to build machines of incredible precision. At each stop, Elle grew quieter. Her questions became shorter. Her crystal body dimmed to a thoughtful blue. The final stop on the Earth tour was the orbital shipyards above the planet. Amy and Elle took a shuttle up through the atmosphere and docked with the main construction platform. Through the windows, they could see the skeleton of humanity's greatest achievement taking shape. The Endurance was massive, nearly a kilometer long. Workers in spacesuits crawled along her frame like ants building a cathedral. Sparks flew as welders sealed hull plates into place. Transport ships carried materials from Earth and the Moon in an endless stream. This is our first true interstellar vessel, Amy explained. She'll be able to reach other star systems within a single human lifetime. We expect her to be operational within 5 years. Elle floated closer to the window, her form casting rainbow reflections on the glass. This should not be possible. Excuse me. According to all council models, a species at your stage of development should not be capable of building a vessel like this for at least another 300 years. Your rate of technological advancement is unprecedented. Amy shrugged. We've always been fast learners. Elle turned to face her, and for the first time, Amy thought she saw something like concern in the alien's shifting colors. This is not about learning. This is about fundamental capability. Your species should not be able to do what you are doing. The tour continued to the project briefing room, where Dr. Cole was waiting for them. Was the lead physicist on the Endurance project, a quiet man in his late 50s with gray at his temples and glasses that always seemed to be slightly crooked. He spoke slowly and carefully, as if every word cost him something. He gave Elle a detailed presentation on the Endurance's propulsion system. It was based on principles that human scientists had developed from scratch without any access to alien technology. The math was elegant. The engineering was sound. The whole thing should have been impossible. When the presentation ended, Elle asked the question that had been building inside her for weeks. How is this possible? Your species was using primitive combustion engines within living memory. Your conflicts should have set you back generations. How have you advanced so quickly? Removed his glasses and cleaned them with his shirt, a habit he fell into when thinking deeply. You've been watching us for a long time, he said. You've seen our wars, our mistakes, our cruelty to each other, and you concluded that we were primitive and self-destructive. Am I right? Elle's colors shifted to an affirmative yellow. Here's what you missed, continued. Those wars, those conflicts, they weren't just destruction. They were also innovation. Every time humans fight, we create. New weapons become new tools. Military technology becomes civilian technology. Competition drives progress. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Endurance. When we learned we weren't alone in the universe, everything changed. Suddenly, we weren't just competing with each other anymore. We had a whole galaxy to measure ourselves against, and humans hate losing. We hate being told we're not good enough. It makes us angry, and when humans get angry, we get creative. He turned back to Elle. You came here expecting to find primitives. Instead, you found a species that has spent its entire history pushing past every limit placed on it. And now that we know there are stars to reach, Do you really think anything is going to stop us? Elle was silent for a long moment. Then she excused herself to compose her preliminary report. That night, she transmitted her findings to the council. Her message was flagged as urgent, the first time she had used that designation in over 1,000 years. The council's response came within hours. An emergency session was called. The 12 elder species gathered to discuss what to do about humanity. The debates lasted for weeks. Some argued that humans should be contained immediately, before they grew too powerful to control. Others suggested accelerating their integration, bringing them into the fold where they could be monitored. A few even proposed more drastic measures. In the end, a compromise was reached. Humanity would be given a test, a challenge that would prove once and for all whether they deserved a place among the stars. If they passed, they would be granted full membership in the Galactic Union. If they failed, they would accept whatever restrictions the Council deemed necessary. Amy Vance heard the news from herself. The aliens' colors had shifted to something Amy had never seen before, a mixture of purple and silver that seemed almost like respect. "Your species has been given an opportunity," Elle said. "No young race has ever been offered such a chance. I advise you not to waste it." Amy smiled. "We don't waste opportunities. It's not in our nature." As Elle's ship departed Earth orbit, Amy watched it go with a mixture of pride and determination. Humanity had passed the first test. Now came the real challenge. She did not know yet what that challenge would be, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever the galaxy threw at them, humans would find a way. They always did. The Galactic Council Chamber was a vast sphere floating in the void between stars. It had been built 10,000 years ago by a species that no longer existed, a monument to civilizations that had risen and fallen while the Council endured. The 12 elder species gathered here to decide the fate of younger races, and today they would decide the fate of humanity. High Arbiter and presided over the session. He was ancient beyond human comprehension, his original organic body long since replaced by machines that hummed with cold precision. Only his eyes remained unchanged, pale and unblinking, holding memories of a universe humanity could barely imagine. "The assessment reports are clear," and said, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. "The human species presents an anomaly. Their rate of advancement exceeds all established models. Their capacity for adaptation is unprecedented. They are unpredictable." Ambassador rose to speak. "I have met these humans personally. They are arrogant. They refused our generous offer of client status. They believe themselves our equals." A murmur passed through the assembled representatives. "Perhaps they have reason for confidence," said a voice like flowing water. The speaker was High Minister of the beings of living liquid who had achieved enlightenment when human ancestors still lived in trees. "The reports suggest their capabilities are genuine." "Capabilities and wisdom are not the same thing," and replied. "Many capable species have brought ruin upon themselves and others. The Empire was capable. They nearly destroyed half a quadrant before we stopped them." The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and countered. Ancient precedents were cited. Projections were calculated and recalculated. Finally, a compromise emerged from the chaos. "We will test them," and announced. "As we have tested others who claimed readiness for full membership. If they pass, they will be elevated to full status. If they fail, they will accept limitations on their expansion until such time as they demonstrate true maturity." The test was chosen with cruel precision. Humanity would be sent to the expanse, a region of space that had been a source of conflict for generations. There, the collective held dominion over 17 systems. There were warriors, predators who had rejected every attempt at diplomacy. They had killed envoys from a dozen different species. They had made a mockery of the Council's peace. "If humans can broker a lasting peace with the," and declared, They will have proven themselves worthy. This is a task that has defeated our best diplomats for 5,000 years. Let us see what these ambitious primitives can accomplish." The decision was unanimous. 3 weeks later, Ambassador returned to Earth to deliver the terms. He met with human leadership in New York, in the same building where the United Nations had gathered for over 2 centuries. Was there, older now but still standing straight and strong. Beside him sat Admiral Grace Taylor, commander of Earth's Space Forces, a woman whose silver hair and sharp eyes made her look like a hawk in human form. Dr. Lisa Monroe was also present, along with a dozen other military and civilian leaders. Explained the challenge with obvious satisfaction. They were not just warriors, they were bred for violence. Their planet was a high-gravity death world where every creature was a predator. Strength was their only value. Weakness was punished with death. They had no concept of mercy, no tradition of surrender. "Every species that has attempted to negotiate with the has failed," said. "Most of those envoys never returned. They see diplomacy as weakness. They see peace offerings as insults." Listened carefully, and if we succeed, full membership, complete equality with the elder races, a seat on the council itself in time. And if we fail, his compound eyes glittered. Then you will accept your place as a client species. No further negotiation will be permitted. After the alien departed, the human leaders sat in heavy silence. The weight of the challenge pressed down on all of them. "This is impossible," said one of the civilian advisors, a man named Frank Hobbs who had spent 30 years in foreign service. "They've designed this test specifically so we'll fail." Admiral Taylor shook her head. "Nothing is impossible. Difficult, yes, but humans have done difficult things before." "We need the right person," said. "Someone who can think outside the box, someone who understands both war and peace, someone that might actually respect." The room fell quiet again. Then Lisa spoke up. "I know someone, Commander Price. She led the negotiations during the Mars colonial conflict. She also commanded combat operations when those negotiations broke down. The colonists hated her at first. By the end, they were asking her to stay and govern them." Admiral Taylor nodded slowly. "I know Price, unorthodox, doesn't follow rules well, makes her superiors nervous." "Exactly the kind of person we need," said. The message went out that night. Commander Price was on a research station near Jupiter when she received it. She read the orders 3 times, certain there had been some mistake. Then she started packing. The ship chosen for the mission was the Liberty, fresh from the orbital shipyards. She was smaller than the Endurance but faster and more maneuverable. Her crew was hand-picked from volunteers across the fleet. What made the Liberty unique was her diversity. Her officers came from 12 different nations. Her crew spoke 23 languages. Some people questioned this choice, arguing that such a mixed group would struggle to work together under pressure. Saw it differently. She gathered her crew on the hangar deck before departure and looked at the faces before her. She saw Americans and Russians, Chinese and Indians, Brazilians and Nigerians and Australians and more. Each of them carried their own history, their own perspective, their own way of seeing the universe. "Some people think our differences make us weak," she said. "The Council certainly thinks so. They look at humanity and see a species that can't stop fighting itself. They see our divisions, our conflicts, our endless arguments." She paused, letting her words settle. "They're wrong. Our differences are not our weakness. They're our greatest strength. Every one of you brings something unique to this mission. Different ways of thinking, different approaches to problems, different ideas about what's possible. When we face we won't be facing them as Americans or Russians or Chinese. We'll be facing them as humans. All of human history, all of human ingenuity, all of human stubbornness packed into one ship." Lieutenant Danny Shaw, her tactical officer, was a young man from Texas who had never been beyond Mars before this assignment. He stood at the back of the crowd, feeling the weight of her words. "Ma'am," he said, "what if they don't want to talk? What if they just attack us on sight?" Smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. "Then we'll give them something to think about, and then we'll try again. Humans don't give up, Lieutenant. It's not in our programming." Ambassador was present for the departure, observing from a diplomatic vessel nearby. He watched the Liberty engage her engines and jump to faster-than-light speed, carrying humanity's hopes into the most dangerous region of known space. He expected never to see them again. The Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the expanse and immediately understood why so many had failed before her. The space around them was filled with debris. Wrecked ships from a dozen different species tumbled slowly through the void, their hulls torn open, their crews long dead. This was not just a warning. It was a monument to supremacy. "Picking up at least 40 separate vessel signatures," reported Ensign Maria Santos from the sensor station. She was a small woman from Brazil with quick hands and quicker eyes. "All of them old. Some of these wrecks have been here for centuries." Lieutenant Danny Shaw studied the tactical display with growing unease. These aren't just diplomatic ships. Some of these were warships, heavy cruisers by the look of them, that tore them apart. Stood at the center of the bridge, arms crossed, studying the graveyard before them. Every commander who had come before her had approached them with gifts and offers of peace. Every one of them had died for their trouble. She was not going to make the same mistake. "Helm, set course for the border zone," she ordered. Her executive officer commander frowned. "Ma'am, that's deep in raiding territory. Our mission is to reach there and open diplomatic channels." "Our mission is to make peace with the," replied. "Nobody said anything about how we have to do it. They don't respect diplomats. They kill diplomats. If we want them to listen, we need to speak their language first." The Liberty changed course, diving deeper into hostile space. They found what they were looking for 2 days later. A convoy of civilian transport ships from a neighboring system was fleeing a raiding party. The transports were slow and poorly armed, carrying refugees who had already lost their homes once. Now they were about to lose their lives. 40 attack craft surrounded the convoy like wolves circling wounded prey. They were not in any hurry. They enjoyed the hunt. They enjoyed the fear of their victims even more. "Ma'am, we're picking up distress signals," Maria reported. "The transports are begging for help, but there's no one else in range." Danny ran the numbers at his station. "Commander, 40 against 1. Those are impossible odds." Looked at the display, at the terrified civilians, at the predators closing in for the kill. She thought about every mission briefing she had read about They respected strength. They despised weakness. They had never met an opponent who could truly challenge them. "All hands to battle stations," she said calmly. "Lieutenant Shaw, you have weapons free." The Liberty shot forward like an arrow, engines screaming at maximum power. They did not even notice her at first. They were too focused on their prey. By the time their sensors registered the approaching ship, it was already too late. Human combat doctrine was different from anything they had encountered. It was the product of 10,000 years of warfare against the most dangerous predator on Earth, humans themselves. It emphasized speed, precision, and ruthless efficiency. It assumed that every enemy was deadly and that hesitation meant death. The Liberty's weapons spoke with devastating accuracy. The first 3 ships exploded before they could even raise shields. The next 5 tried to scatter but had anticipated their movements. She had studied everything the Council had on tactics. She knew how they thought. She knew how they fought. And she was better. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, 23 ships drifted dead in space. The remaining 17 had been disabled, their weapons destroyed, their engines crippled. Not a single human life had been lost. Danny stared at his display in disbelief. "We did it. We actually did it." But was not finished. "Open a channel to the vessels," she ordered. Wide broadcast. Make sure they can hear this too. The communication officer, Lieutenant Kate Murphy, made the connection with trembling hands. She had never been in combat before today. She suspected she would never forget it. Stood before the camera, her uniform still crisp despite the chaos of battle. She spoke clearly and slowly, knowing that her words would be translated and analyzed by creatures who had never been defeated. This is Commander Price of the Earth vessel Liberty. We have defeated your raiding party. We have spared the survivors. We did not come here to destroy you. We came here because we recognize strength when we see it. She paused, letting the message sink in. Your people have fought alone against a galaxy that fears you. You have been called monsters, barbarians, savages, but we see something different. We see warriors. We see a species that refuses to bow to anyone. Humans know what that is like. We have been underestimated too. We are not offering you peace because we are weak. We are offering you alliance because we are strong. Fight with us, not against us, and together we will show this galaxy what real strength looks like. This is not a surrender demand. This is an invitation between equals. She cut the transmission and waited. For 3 days there was no response. The disabled ships were collected by their own people, who arrived in heavily armed rescue vessels. They studied the Liberty from a distance but did not attack. Something had changed in their calculations. On the 4th day, a massive ship appeared at the edge of sensor range. It was the largest vessel had ever seen, a dreadnought bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The flagship of the war chief himself. They're hailing us, Kate reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The flickered to life and found herself face to face with Orr, supreme commander of the collective. He was enormous, even by standards, his body covered in scars that told the story of 100 battles. His eyes were the color of dried blood, and they studied with an intensity that would have made most beings look away. She did not look away. You killed many of my warriors, Orr said. His voice was like gravel grinding against stone. I disabled many of your ships, corrected. I killed only those who gave me no choice. The rest are alive. You can ask them yourself. Orr was silent for a long moment. No species has ever defeated us in combat and then offered partnership. You are either very foolish or very dangerous. Allowed herself a small smile. We are human, we are both. The war chief stared at her. Then he did something that No had done in the presence of an outsider for 5,000 years. He laughed. It was a terrible sound, like boulders crashing down a mountain, but it was genuine. I have studied your species since you arrived in our space, Orr said. I know of your history, your wars, your endless conflicts with each other. The Council calls you primitive. They say you are too violent to be trusted. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. They are correct that you are violent, but they are wrong to fear it. They have been alone for too long. The elder races are soft. They have forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight, to earn survival. Perhaps your people have not forgotten. Met his gaze without flinching. We have not forgotten, we never will. Orr nodded slowly. Then let us talk, Commander, not as enemies, not as supplicants, but as warriors who might become allies. The negotiations that followed were unlike any diplomatic process the galaxy had ever seen. There were no gifts exchanged, no elaborate ceremonies, no empty promises. Instead, there were honest conversations about strength and weakness, about threats and opportunities, about what two warrior species might accomplish together. When the Liberty finally departed the Expanse, she was escorted by 20 warships. Their crews had pledged alliance to humanity, the first time in their history they had ever offered such an honor to outsiders. The impossible had been achieved. The galaxy would never be the same. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. A young species, barely 2 centuries out of their own solar system, had accomplished what the elder races could not. The collective, terror of 17 star systems had made peace, not through submission, not through trickery, but through mutual respect. The implications shook the foundations of galactic civilization. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. People who had never met who had never even left their planet, danced in the streets at the news of victory. Commander Price became a hero overnight, her face appearing on screens and in newspapers across the world. But she did not have time to enjoy the attention. There was still work to be done. The Liberty returned to Earth orbit escorted by the Honor Guard, 20 warships that could have conquered most systems single-handedly. They took positions around the planet, not as conquerors but as protectors. War Chief or himself came aboard a shuttle to meet with human leadership. Greeted him at the landing pad, standing straight despite his advancing years. The two warriors studied each other for a long moment, each recognizing something familiar in the other's eyes. "You trained her well," Or said, nodding toward the commander. "She fights like one who has known defeat." Smiled. "She grew up during hard times. Learned that you can't always win, but you can always keep trying. That is the true strength," Or agreed. "Not victory, persistence." The Galactic Council had no choice but to honor their agreement. Humanity had passed the impossible test. Within weeks, formal proceedings began to grant Earth full membership in the Galactic Union. The ceremony took place in the Great Council Chamber, that vast sphere floating between stars where the fate of civilizations was decided. For the first time in history, human representatives stood before the 12 elder species not as supplicants but as equals. Had been chosen to speak for humanity. He was old now, his hair completely gray, his body showing the wear of decades of service. But his eyes were as sharp as ever, and his voice carried clearly through the ancient hall. "1 year ago you came to our planet and offered us a choice. Accept your place as servants or be contained until you learned humility. We chose neither option. Instead, we asked for a chance to prove ourselves." He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Some watched him with curiosity, others with resentment. A few, including the assessor, watched with something that might have been admiration. "You designed a test that was meant to be impossible. You sent us to expecting us to fail, expecting us to come back broken and ready to accept whatever terms you offered. But you made a mistake. You underestimated what humans are capable of when we're told something cannot be done." He paused, letting his words echo through the hall. "We did not defeat with superior weapons or superior numbers. We won because we understood something you have forgotten. Respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. They had been treated as monsters for 5,000 years. We treated them as warriors, as equals, and they responded in kind." High Arbiter and stirred in his mechanical throne. "You speak boldly for a species so young." "I speak honestly," replied. "And here is another truth. We are not here to take your place. We are not here to dominate or destroy. We know we are young. We know we have much to learn, but we also have much to offer." He gestured to the delegation behind him. Humans of every background and nationality, standing together as representatives of their world. "Look at us. We come from a planet with thousands of cultures, thousands of languages, thousands of ways of seeing the universe. We have spent our entire history learning to work with people who are different from us. Sometimes we learned through war, sometimes through cooperation, always through struggle. That experience has made us adaptable in ways you cannot imagine. The galaxy has been stagnant for 100,000 years, the same species making the same decisions, following the same patterns. You have achieved stability, yes, but stability is not the same as progress. Safety is not the same as growth." He took a step forward, his old bones protesting but his spirit undiminished. "We are offering you something new, not conquest, not chaos, change, partnership. A chance to become something greater than any of us could be alone. They have already accepted this offer. We hope the rest of the galaxy will do the same." The chamber fell silent. For a long moment no one spoke. Then, slowly, one by one, representatives began to signal their acceptance. It was not unanimous. Some species would take years to accept humanity's new position, but it was enough. Earth was no longer a client species, no longer a primitive world to be managed and controlled. Earth was a full member of the Galactic Union, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. In the years that followed, humanity proved worthy of that trust. They spread across the stars not as conquerors but as connectors. Where there was conflict, humans built bridges. Where there was stagnation, humans brought innovation. Where there was fear, humans brought hope. The alliance with the grew stronger with each passing year. Human and crews served together on joint vessels. Human engineers helped modernize worlds. Warriors trained alongside human soldiers. Two species that should have been enemies became something closer to family. Other species began to see the value in the human approach. The beings of living water established cultural exchanges with Earth's ocean nations. The silicon-based crystalline concordat, who had communicated only through mathematical proofs for 10,000 years, discovered the joy of human music. Even the cold mechanical and found himself consulting with human philosophers about the nature of consciousness and identity. 20 years after first contact, a new threat emerged from the void between galaxies. They called themselves the Silence, creatures of darkness that consumed light and life wherever they found it. They had been traveling toward the Milky Way for millions of years, and now they had arrived. The Galactic Council was paralyzed by fear. Many of the elder species had never faced a true existential threat. They had grown comfortable, complacent, certain that their technology and their institutions would protect them forever. But humanity remembered what it meant to fight for survival. Admiral Price, now commanding the combined fleet of 6 allied species, stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the Silence advance. Behind her stood officers from a dozen worlds, united by a common purpose. Beside her was War Chief War, his old scars now joined by new ones earned in a lifetime of battles fought alongside humans. "They expect us to run," said quietly, or growled deep in his chest. "They have never met humans." Or, the old warrior showed his teeth in something that was not quite a smile. "Today they learn." The Battle of the Void lasted for 3 days. It was the largest engagement in galactic history, thousands of ships from dozens of species fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed endless. Many died. Heroes were made and lost in the space of moments. But in the end, the Silence was turned back. Not destroyed, perhaps not even truly defeated, but shown that this galaxy would not fall easily. The message was clear. These stars were defended, these peoples were united, and they would never surrender. When the news reached Earth, was in a hospital bed, his old body finally failing after a lifetime of service. Lisa Monroe sat beside him, holding his hand as they watched the victory celebration on the screen. "We did it," Lisa whispered. "Everything you hoped for, everything you worked for, it actually happened." Smiled weakly. "Not me, them, the ones who came after, they did the real work." He looked at the screen, at the humans and aliens celebrating together, at the ships of a dozen species flying in formation, at a galaxy that had been transformed by a species that refused to accept limits. "We just opened the door," he said. "They walked through it." He closed his eyes for the last time, at peace with everything he had helped set in motion. Outside his window, the stars shone brighter than they ever had before. Somewhere out there, human ships carried human dreams to worlds that had never known hope. Somewhere out there, enemies became allies and strangers became friends. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what humanity had always known. The future was not something to be feared. It was something to be built, together. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth once. They had learned their lesson. They would never make that mistake again, and the universe was better for it.